destruction after deadly strike on Gaza camp. NATO pledges major package of air defenses for Ukraine. Good afternoon and Salam Malaysia Madani. Thanks for joining us. I'm Otto Othman and you're watching World Today. An Israeli airstrike in southern Gaza Strip killed more than 24 people, while advancing tanks in Gaza City forced residents to flee under fire as Israel stepped up an offensive that Hamas warned could jeopardize ceasefire talks. The airstrike hit the tents of displaced families outside a school in the town of Abasan, east of Khan Yunis in southern Gaza, killing at least 29 people. Most of them were women and children. The attack also resulted in widespread destruction. Residents said Israeli tanks that pushed into the Tel Al-Hawa, Shajaya and Sabra neighborhoods of Gaza City shelled roads and buildings, forcing them to flee their homes. This was followed by Israeli military orders to evacuate several districts in eastern and western Gaza City, which included these neighborhoods. The Palestinian Red Crescent said its crews received dozens of humanitarian distress calls from Gaza City, but were unable to help due to intensity of the bombing in the area. The latest fighting has unfolded as senior U.S. officials were in the region to push for a ceasefire after Hamas made concessions last week. But Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh said he had warned mediators that the catastrophic consequences of the latest battles could reset the negotiation process. On a related note, United Nations rights experts accuse Israel of carrying out a targeted starvation campaign that has resulted in deaths of children in Gaza. 10 independent United Nations experts said in a statement that Israel's international and targeted starvation campaign against the Palestinians is a form of genocidal violence and has resulted in famine across all of Gaza. The United Nations has not officially declared a famine in the Gaza Strip. However, the experts, including the UN Special Rapporteur on the Right to Food, Mikhail Fakhri, insisted there was no denying that famine was underway. The experts said 34 Palestinians have died from malnutrition since 7th October, comprising mostly children. They listed 3 children who recently died from malnutrition after a number of others were said to have starved to death in northern Gaza earlier this year. They noted that with the death of these children from starvation, despite medical treatment in central Gaza, there is no doubt that famine has spread from northern Gaza into central and southern Gaza. The experts decreed that the world had not put more efforts to avert this disaster. They stressed that the whole world should have intervened earlier to stop Israel's genocidal starvation campaign and prevented the deaths. U.S. President Joe Biden announced a major package of air defenses for Ukraine as doubts over his political survival clouded the start of a NATO summit in Washington. Leaders from the 32-nation military alliance were looking to put on a show of resolve against Russia during 3 days of pomp-filled ceremony in the U.S. Capitol, marking NATO's 75th anniversary. But questions over Biden's fitness to govern threatened to dominate the gathering as the 81-year-old faces calls to quit the race for a second term after a disastrous debate performance against challenger Donald Trump. Looking to refocus attention on U.S. steadfastness, Biden kicked off the summit by announcing additional Patriot air defense systems for Ukraine.
The United States, Germany, and Italy will provide Ukraine with the equipment for 5 additional strategic air defense systems. And in the coming months, the United States and our partners intend to provide Ukraine with dozens of additional tactical air defense systems.
The pledge comes on top of 2 new Patriot systems already being given by Germany and Romania, and one the Netherlands has said it is putting together with parts from other allies. Ukraine has for months been clamoring for 7 additional Patriot systems to help protect against devastating Russian strikes. Meanwhile, Russia came under fire at the UN Security Council for conducting systemic attacks on Ukraine's medical facilities after a wave of deadly strikes across the country. President Volodymyr Zelensky said 38 people across Ukraine were killed and 190 wounded in the wave of nearly 40 missiles that targeted several towns and cities on Monday, damaging a children's hospital. Acting Under Secretary for Humanitarian Affairs, Joyce Smuya, told the UN emergency meeting that internationally directing attacks against a protected hospital is a war crime and perpetrators must be held accountable.
These incidents are part of a deeply concerning pattern of systemic attacks harming healthcare and other civilian infrastructure across Ukraine.
Russia, meanwhile, insisted the damage to medical facilities was caused by Ukrainian air defenses, and its envoy to the United Nations, Vasily Nebenzia, called the issue of the strikes on Ukraine not a very gratifying topic. At least one person died when a boat carrying about 18 undocumented migrants sank off Colombia's Caribbean coast. The country's migration office said 15 people were rescued, 6 of whom were minors. No details were available regarding the other 2 people on board. The incident occurred near the islands of San Andres and Providencia, close to Colombia's border with Nicaragua. Military officials said a search and rescue operation was underway by Navy Rapid Reaction Units along with the Air Force. In May, Washington imposed sanctions on Nicaragua, accusing it of aiding the trafficking of undocumented migrants seeking to make it to the United States. Colombia has said that migrants are increasingly using a clandestine route between San Andreas and Nicaragua to avoid the dangerous crossing through the Darien jungle between Colombia and Panama, heading north through Central America and eventually to Mexico and the U.S. border. Samsung Electronics workers in South Korea, who began a 3-day strike since Monday, have warned that there could be more industrial actions later this month if their demands for better pay and improved conditions were not met. The National Samsung Electronics Union, which represents approximately 30,000 employees or 1/4 of the largest conglomerate in South Korea's total workforce, is pushing for enhancements to the performance-based bonus structure and an extra day of annual leave. About 6,500 union members initiated the latest industrial action by protesting outside the company's semiconductor factory.
라인에서 일단 설비들이 많이 죽었고 랏들이 이제 그 반도체 칩들이 죽었다라는 소식을 계속 전해오고 있고요.
The strike marks the largest in Samsung's history following its first ever walkout last month. Analysts suggest that automation and low levels of worker participation mean the strike will have minimal impact on production at the world's largest chip maker. However, the union disputes this, stating that an unexpectedly high number of assembly line workers have joined the latest action. Still ahead, death toll from Indonesia landslide rises to 23. The Paris prosecutor's office has launched a preliminary probe into allegations of illegal financing of far-right national rally leader Marine Le Pen's campaign for the 2022 presidential race, which she lost to Emmanuel Macron. The investigation, which was opened on July 2nd, follows a 2023 report by the National Commission on Campaign Accounts and Political Financing, which scrutinizes candidates' election expenses and funding. The prosecutor's office will look into allegations of embezzlement, forgery, fraud, and that a candidate on an electoral campaign expected a loan. Le Pen and her party have previously denied wrongdoing in connection with campaign financing. Separately, Le Pen is to stand trial later this year alongside 27 others over alleged misuse of European Union funds. Charges to the Le Pen's party has said it contested. That investigation, opened in 2016, aimed to ascertain whether the then National Front had used money disdained for EU parliamentary assistance to pay staff who were working for the party. Peru's prosecution has requested a jail term of 30 years and 10 months for three-time presidential candidate Keiko Fujimori, who is on trial for corruption. The 49-year-old daughter of ex-president Alberto Fujimori stands accused of taking money from scandal-tainted Brazilian construction giant Odebrecht to fund failed presidential bids in 2011 and 2016. She went on trial last week on charges of money laundering, organized crime, obstruction of justice, and making false declarations. Fujimori had already spent 16 months in pre-trial detention before being freed ahead of the 2021 presidential elections, which she lost. Fujimori's trial, which started on July 1st, with some 1,500 names on the witness list, is expected to last more than a year. She is charged alongside 45 others, including her ex-husband, American Mark Vito Villanella, and former members and leaders of her Popular Force Party. 4 former Peruvian presidents have been implicated in the Odebrecht affair, including two-term leader Alan Garcia, who committed suicide in 2019 when police came to his house to arrest him. Alec Baldwin's involuntary manslaughter trial over a fatal shooting on the set of Western movie Rust began with the selection of a jury who will now decide if a crew member's death was his fault. The Hollywood A-lister was pointing a gun at a cinematographer, Helena Hutchinson, during a rehearsal in 2021 when it fired a live round, killing her and wounding the movie's director. Baldwin claimed he did not know the gun was loaded and did not pull the trigger. However, the prosecutor said he broke basic gun safety rules and acted recklessly on set. Baldwin is world famous for roles including hit comedy 30 Rock, as well as his sketching impersonations of Donald Trump on Saturday Night Live. Sympathetic observers view Baldwin as a victim who has been pursued by prosecutors in part due to his status as a celebrity and liberal darling. Others see the death as the easily avoidable result of a movie star's allegedly unpredictable behavior during filming. The death toll from a landslide near an illegal gold mine on Indonesia's central island of Sulawesi has risen to 23 people, while 35 others are still missing. A search and rescue official said that some victims were miners, while others were people who operated stalls near the mine. The landslide hit a remote village in the Bolonga district of Gorontalo province late Saturday following intense rains. The search and rescue officials confirmed more than 270 people, including police officers and soldiers, have been deployed as part of the rescue operation over the last 2 days. Vehicles remain unable to reach the disaster area as several bridges collapsed, with rescuers having to travel by foot for more than 20 kilometers. Indonesia is prone to landslides during the rainy season between November and April, but July is usually dry season and heavy rains are rare. In May, at least 15 people died after landslides and flooding in South Sulawesi province swept away dozens of houses and damaged roads. A landslide in the same province a month before killed 20 people. Elsewhere, at least 8 people were killed in the southern United States after Storm Beryl felled trees and caused heavy flooding before being downgraded to a post-tropical cyclone. Beryl entered Texas from the Gulf of Mexico as a Category 1 hurricane early Monday. The total death toll from the record-breaking hurricane has risen to at least 18 after it tore through the Caribbean last week, at one point as a Category 5 hurricane, the highest recordable strength. Some 2 million households in Texas were without electricity due to damaged power grids, even as temperatures were forecast to reach 41 degrees Celsius with humidity factored in. The U.S. National Hurricane Center said Beryl weakened yesterday and was heading northeast through the Midwest United States with 45 kilometers per hour winds, warning it could still generate flooding and tornadoes. Over in Japan, at least 6 people have died of heat stroke in Tokyo as the country swelters under a rare rainy season heat wave, prompting authorities to issue a flurry of health warnings. Over the weekend, the central Shizuoka region became the first in Japan to see the mercury reach 40 degrees Celsius this year, far surpassing the 35-degree threshold classified by weather officials as extremely hot. Such severe heat in the middle of Japan's rainy season is rather rare, caused in part by a strong South Pacific high-pressure system. The past few days have seen authorities issue heat stroke alerts in much of the country, urging residents to avoid exercising outside and to use air conditioning. According to the city's medical examination office, the capital logged 3 deaths linked to the heat stroke on Saturday and 3 more on Monday, when the mercury hovered around 35 degrees Celsius at midday. Heat stroke is particularly deadly in Japan, which has the second oldest population in the world after Monaco. The Japanese Association for Acute Medicine warned of the rising death toll from the heat exhaustion nationwide, which grew from just a few hundreds per year 2 decades ago to around 1,500 in 2022. In Albania, soldiers and firefighters were battling flames raging near southern Albania villages near the Greek border as a heat wave sweeps the Balkans. Footage released by the Albania's Defense Ministry shows dozens of firefighters battling the wildfires. The blaze started as an isolated incident in the mountains, but within 2 hours, it posed a danger to residents in the villages of Frastan, Gorica, and Dropul. The fire is currently under control and does not threaten residents or their homes, but it has yet to be extinguished. The cause of the wildfire is still under investigation. Experts say human-induced climate change is responsible for the wild weather swings, increasingly unpredictable storms, and heat waves, which can cause wildfires. Europe's big new rocket, Ariane 6, blasted off successfully yesterday at 4 p.m. local time from Europe's spaceport on Kourou, carrying with it the hopes of regaining independent access to space. Ariane 6's first launch, which was originally planned for 2020, is hoped to bring an end to a difficult time for European space efforts. Crews on the ground in Kourou applauded as the rocket soared into the sky. The rocket will ascend to an altitude of 580 kilometers before starting to offload free-flying payloads. Developed at a cost of $4 billion, Ariane 6 is intended to be a workhorse rocket that gives European governments and companies access to space independently. Since the last flight of its workhorse predecessor, Ariane 5, a year ago, Europe has been unable to launch satellites or other missions into space without relying on rivals such as Elon Musk's US firm SpaceX. Next up in sports, Yamal makes history as Spain reach Euro final. Kicking off our sports segment with football. Spain struck twice in 5 minutes in a pulsating first half to secure a 2-1 comeback win over France as a record-breaking goal from teenager Lamine Yamal and a Dani Olmo effort propelled them into the Euro 2024 final. Spain had an early chance when Yamal, the youngest player to feature in a World Cup or Euro semi-final, floated across to the far post, but Fabian Ruiz headed over the bar. France did better from an almost identical move in the 9th minute, with Kylian Mbappe crossing for Kolo Muani to head in their first goal from open play at Euro 2024. But the Spaniards, who were missing suspended Dani Carvajal and Robin Lee Normand, as well as injured Pedri, quickly turned the game around. Yamal curled a stunning left-footed effort from 25 meters in off the post to break another record held by Brazil great Pelé as the youngest scorer in a Euro or World Cup. Before France had any time to recover, Olmo completed their lightning-quick comeback in the 25th minute with a shot that was deflected in by France's Jules Condé. Spain will now face the winners of tomorrow morning's match between England and Netherlands in the final in Berlin on Sunday as they hunt a record-breaking 4th European crown. England manager Gareth Southgate believes his side have been freed up by edging closer to a first-ever major final on foreign soil at the Euro 2024 after struggling to deal with the weight of expectation earlier in the tournament. The Three Lions arrived in Germany as one of the favourites thanks to a richly talented squad and an upturn in their fortunes under Southgate. England are in a third semi-final in 4 tournaments where they will face the Netherlands in Dortmund tomorrow morning. But they have never reached a final outside of England or won the European Championship before. Southgate's men have been heavily criticised for their performances at Euro 2024, where they have won only 1 of their 5 games in 90 minutes. But he said his players showed signs of what they are capable of in the quarter-final win over Switzerland on penalties after needing a late Bukayo Saka equaliser to send the game to extra time.
We're prepared for anything. I think it will be an exciting game. You've got a lot of very good players on the pitch, a lot of good forward players, both teams. So we've got to be another step from what we showed in the last game. It's another step up in terms of the quality of some of the opponents, and we have to be ready for that.
England's only previous European Championship final was 3 years ago when they missed out agonizingly on penalties to Italy at Wembley. Moving on to tennis, Carlos Alcaraz won the battle of the 2 most recent Queen's Club champions as the Spaniard edged closer to a winning second successive Wimbledon title with an enthralling 5-7, 6-4, 6-2, 6-2 quarterfinal victory over American Tommy Paul. Paul conjured some breathtaking shot-making during the first 2 sets and kept drawing roars of approval from the Court 1 crowd while making life uncomfortable for the 3rd seed. However, any hopes he might have harbored of ending his country's 21-year wait for a men's Grand Slam champion at the All-England Club this weekend were eventually snuffed out as the 21-year-old Alcaraz produced the goods on the crunch moments to run away with the final 2 sets. After being kept on court for just over 3 hours, the 3rd seed won his 12th match in a row at the grass court major when Paul swiped the ball wide. Alcaraz will next meet 2021 US Open champion Daniil Medvedev for a place in Sunday's final. Alcaraz, seeking to become just the 6th man to capture the French Open and Wimbledon titles back-to-back, defeated Medvedev in straight sets in last year's Wimbledon semi-finals. Meanwhile, Medvedev stunned world number 1 Jannik Sinner, who suffered a mid-match health scare 6-7, 6-4, 7-6, 2-6, 6-3. 5th-ranked Medvedev avenged his Australian Open final loss to Sinner in a 4-hour quarter-final win. In a tight first set in which neither man gave up a break point, Medvedev edged ahead in a tiebreak on the back of a lung-busting 33-shot rally. However, he squandered a set point and his game suddenly fell apart, serving up a double fault as Sinner pocketed the opener. The mercurial Russian leveled the quarterfinal before Sinner summoned the tournament physio after falling a break down in the 3rd set. After a 10-minute delay, the 22-year-old resumed play and thrilled the center court crowd when he bravely clawed his way back to 5-all. He then wasted 2 set points, which allowed Medvedev to sweep through the tiebreak. However, the Italian was undaunted and leveled the quarterfinal before Medvedev finished the fresher of the two players, breaking in the fourth game of the final set on his way to victory. Medvedev will be playing in his 9th Grand Slam semi-final. In the women's draw, 7th seed Jasmine Paolini blazed past American Emma Navarro 6-2, 6-1, becoming the first Italian woman to make the Wimbledon semi-finals, where she faces experienced Croatian Donna Vekic. Paolini, the runner-up at the French Open last month, needed just 57 minutes to see off Navarro, the conqueror of second-ranked Coco Gauff in the last round. The 28-year-old, who had not won a tour-level main draw match on grass before this year, fired 19 winners to her opponent's 6. Paolini's victory ensured she eclipsed compatriots Camila Giorgia, Francesca Schiavone, Silvia Farina Elia and Laura Golarza, who had all reached the quarterfinals at the grass court Grand Slam in the Open era.
6-2, 6-1.
In another match, Lula Sun's extraordinary Wimbledon journey ground to a halt in the quarterfinals as the New Zealand's qualifier was beaten 5-7, 6-4, 6-1 by experienced Croatian Donna Vekic. Sun, ranked 123rd in the world, was playing her 8th match of the tournament, including qualifying in 2 weeks, and the strain eventually told. Despite her defeat, however, Sun will rise into the top 60 thanks to her All-England club run. Victory meant Vekic reached her maiden Grand Slam semi-final at the 43rd attempt and became only the second woman from her nation to do so at the All-England club, as she matched Mirjana Lucic's 1999 feat. In cycling, Belgian Jasper Philipsen won a mass sprint ahead of Eritrean Binian Girmay on stage 10 of the Tour de France after a flat 187.3-kilometer ride south from Orleans. After Monday's rest, the 172 remaining riders embarked from the city of Orleans past the statue of Jeanne d'Arc and the historic city's giant cathedral. Last year's green jersey winner, Philipsen, closed the gap slightly on current occupant Girmay, who has 2 stage wins and 267 points to the Alpecin Deconic Riders 193. Philipsen was guided to victory by teammate and world road race champion Matteo van der Poel. Before today's potentially explosive stage, man to beat Tadej Pogačar protected his 33-second overall lead over Remco Evenepoel, with defending champion Jonas Vingegaard at 1 minute 15 seconds in third. In the battle for the overall title, the so-called Fab Four of Pogačar, Evenepoel, Vingegaard and Primož Roglic are locked in a tense and techy struggle at this halfway stage, 10 with no obvious favourite. In his Giro d'Italia Tour double bid, Pogačar may have expected to be further ahead given how much effort he has invested. Two-time winner Vingegaard is riding into form and winning a war of nerves as he tails Pogačar relentlessly, but has suffered an early blow with the 1 minute 15 seconds deficit. Pogačar's compatriot Roglic is raging a dark horse run in fourth at 1 minute 36 seconds, but is priming his form for week 3. And that wraps up World Today. In our top story, widespread destruction after deadly strike on Gaza camp. Tune in to Malaysia Tonight, coming up at 8:30 p.m. on TV1 and saluran Berita RTM. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. I'm Otto Othman. Thanks you for watching.